So, you want to start simming in ACC. You've watched all of the professional sim tubers, watched all of their top 10 videos, and you've went and spent a fortune on your racing gear. Now you're ready, right? Nah. What about the less talked about tips? What about those little assumed knowledge tips that they think everybody knows that come to sim racing? Well, I'm here to tell you that there are a lot of little nuances that are not really talked about from the professionals, but they should be. And looking at the alarming amount of pro tips and top tips here and professional tips there, and you want to start sim racing here, videos that are on YouTube, I thought, why not get in on that? So I'm here to give you all my top 10 rookie tips for starting in ACC. Before we get started, if you like what I'm doing here at JC Collins Racing, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to head over to jccollinsracing.com to find more ways to support my racing career as well as this channel's growth. A quick disclaimer, these are not ranked in any specific order. They are just more or less my top 10 recommendations for starting off as a rookie in ACC. Of course, your mileage may vary. Starting off with tip number 1, button configs and force feedback settings. So this is a really important one, and believe it or not, there are more people that actually forget all about this before they even start playing. And when it comes to ACC, you have to make sure that every single button or input or throttle or brake pedal or clutch is assigned. If not, you will make the rookie mistake that I did by going into a race and not being able to control your car at all. So you would just sit there and look stupid while either the AI or, hey, anybody on multiplayer would just breeze right past you. When it comes to setting your throttle, brake, and clutch, you may have to actually click on the inverted option depending on your pedal set. In my experience with the Logitech G29 and the Fanatec V3 pedals, this option is definitely inverted when you first set it. I'm not entirely sure why it defaults to this, but if you don't go back and click inverted, you may end up in a situation where your throttle is permanently stuck at 100%. Same thing with your clutch and your brake, versus when you're not pressing it, it should be set to 0. So this is a big one that you should definitely always start off with to make sure that your throttle, brake, and clutch are set to the way that they need to be. If you're trying to go the more realistic route, you also will need to absolutely make sure that your ignition, starter, and pit limiters are set to a button. Because if not, you will be stuck in a situation where you will not be able to start your car, or B, if you actually stall your car, you will not be able to restart it unless you have the auto start function enabled in the options. Force feedback is one of those things that you will not get right the first time. So don't try to on the first try. You have to give yourself some time to get familiar with the sim, learn your wheelbase, understand what's coming through the wheel, and then understand exactly what you want to feel. So you're going to have to try a little bit here and there, then come back and tweak the settings as time progresses. Just make sure that you're actually saving each of your settings as you go. In case you do something that you may not like, you can always go back to a backed up file that was good. Next up at tip number 2 is to try multiple cars. At this point, many people will just beeline straight to their favorite car, but I have to tell you from personal experience, trying multiple cars will help you learn a lot more about your own driving style and what actually works for you in ACC. For example, my favorite car has always been a Lamborghini, but the Lamborghini doesn't like me back. So there have been numerous struggles with me trying to learn and perfect my own driving technique to the Lamborghini, but it just wasn't a fit. So I currently run with the BMW M4 because of the fact that it actually fits my driving style more, and I'm actually more consistent and faster. And that's something I would have never found out if I would have only stuck with the Lamborghini and kept beating my head up against a brick wall. Keep in mind that the fastest car is not always the best car either. When it comes to ACC, you definitely want to find a car that you're consistently fast with. Not the fastest. Anyone can lap a really fast lap time out of 1 in every 30 laps. But if you can consistently lay down a good lap time over those 30 laps, you will do much better than someone who's fast on one particular lap but messes up in the other 19 laps. This is also a time where you don't really need to be concerned with changing setups. The main thing you want to do is hop in a car, take it for a few laps, somewhere between 10 to 20 laps to give yourself a good feel for the vehicle, then hop out of that car and go to another one and try it and rinse and repeat. I would also recommend sticking with one of the presets, whether it's the safe preset or the aggressive preset, because switching between the two presets with each car can kind of confuse you and give you an inconsistent result for each of the driving styles of your cars. At tip number 3, we have practice. As they say, practice makes perfect, but in ACC, you're not really aiming for perfect, you're aiming for better each time. So the best thing that you can do is, once you've figured out what car fits your driving style, take that car to multiple tracks, if not all of them. Actually, yes, go to all of the tracks and practice lapping each of those tracks to learn how your car behaves over curves, bumps, learn exactly how to take each curve with that particular car, and just take your time. Start off really slow, learn the track, learn the limits, learn the ins and out of bounds, and go from there. And as you progressively learn that, you will get faster without even trying to get faster. At this point, you still should not be worried too much about setting up your setups, but just more so just learning the track, learning the car, and getting a feel for each track. And when it comes to practice, you also want to make sure that you have a goal in mind. So each time I practice at a particular location, I think to myself, hey, I want to shave 3/10 off of my time. Or, hey, you know what? Turn 10 is always giving me a hard time. Let me figure out a way to get faster in turn 10. So that way I'm not just lapping and lapping and lapping and getting bored with the sim and not having a goal in mind. Once I lap enough and see that I'm improving at turn 10, then at that point I'll move on to the next track and say, okay, what's my goal for the next track? Also, you want to keep in mind to be consistent over fast. Fast is good, but fast does not win races all the time. In ACC, consistency, and especially in my own personal experience with racing online, consistency will net you a much better result versus just being fast. I've raced countless people who are very fast and have set the fastest lap times. They are, breaking the world records that are recorded on the game. But when you race them, they can't hold it together over a span of 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or even an hour. So I've had pretty good results with finding that a consistent pace is better than a fast pace. Tip number 4, make baseline setups for each track. Once you're comfortable with your car and driving style, now it's time to actually set a baseline setup for each track that you can reference at any point, no matter what the conditions, and you can build upon it. What does that mean? So it means little things like going into each track and setting small changes to tire pressure and maybe to your wheel alignment, such as camber, caster, and toe. Actually, I wouldn't touch caster, but just setting those things and then building upon it throughout your setup as you get more experienced and learn more about your driving style. For example, whenever I go into a new track, I always have that baseline setup where I change the tire pressures to make sure I'm getting up to optimal temperature and pressure. I adjust my traction control of my ABS, and I do very small tweaks to my camber and my toe angles to make sure that I'm getting the amount of turn in and exit that I'm looking for when it comes to corners. At this time, I typically leave the suspension alone because that's way more in depth and can really upset the car's behavior, as well as the aero settings. I don't really touch those at this point either, because small tweaks to that can also change the balance of the car's performance. Adding on to tip number 4, tip number 5 is to make incremental changes to your setup. What does that mean? That means to go into your setup, choose one setting, and make very small changes to it. Go out on the track, test it, come back, make even more small changes. You want to do it this way because making too many changes to the settings could potentially give you the wrong feel that you're looking for. It will make it very hard to troubleshoot to correct. So I recommend making some small changes, saving a setup, go back, test it, rinse and repeat. At this point, if you change the car in a way that you don't like it, you can always go back to a previous save file where the car was in good working behavior. Coming in at tip number 6, we are looking at tire numbers, pressures, and tire wear. So when you're in a session in ACC, if you have a practice session, quali session, and a race, the wear from the tires that you use does not reset when it goes from practice to quali to race. So my tip is to make sure that you're using 3 different tire set numbers for each of those sessions. So if you're not careful, the tires that you use for the practice session can carry over into the quali session, which could affect your lap time, which could ultimately carry over into the race, which could even further affect your grip and your lap time. So you want to make sure that you're not using the same exact tires that are scrubbed and worn down, when with each session you want to make sure that you're using a fresh set. To avoid this, I typically start my first set of tires at tire set number 50, and I work my way backwards. So I typically have tire set 50 for practice, tire set 49 for qualified, and then tire set 48 and below for the race. You also want to make sure that you're going down and clicking on the icon that says use setup tire pressures to make sure that you're matching your optimal tire pressures for the race. Over at tip number 7, we are talking about brake sets. So in ACC, with GT3 cars, you have 4 different brake sets, and with GT4 cars, you have 2 different brake sets. These brake sets represent different amounts of stopping power, heat absorption, and durability of the brakes as you're racing. For GT3 cars, set 1 has really good stopping power, very good heat absorption, but very short life. I typically use set 1 when it comes to doing qualifying sessions or any race that's under 1 hour. Set 2 is kind of your all-around run-of-the-mill brakes. They heat up at a really good rate, they have really good stopping power, and they last pretty long. You can pretty much use these for anything over 1 hour. Set number 3, I recommend these for the rain. They have really good life, pretty good heat absorption, and pretty decent stopping power, but of the first 3, they probably have the least amount of stopping power. Set number 4, I do not recommend using these. These heat up super fast. They are very, very powerful, very strong brakes, but they do not last. I do not recommend using these brakes at all. I don't have much experience with the GT4 cars at this time, so I can't really speak on the 2 different brake sets' performance and durability. For tip number 8, we're talking ECU maps. This is a very important one. If you don't take anything else away from this list of 10, take this one. Each car has their own set of ECU maps, which map out, of course, the amount of power that's being delivered to the engine, as well as fuel consumption. Learn your ECU maps. They could really save you in a pinch when it comes to fuel consumption, especially if you're doing a low fuel challenge or just a long race in general. It's easy, really easy to forget how much fuel you're burning and how much fuel you need. So learning the ins and outs of these maps can actually help you plan and strategize your race according to the length and time, as well as weather and a bunch of other different conditions. The sim itself does not tell you what each ECU means for each vehicle, so you're gonna have to do some digging on this one and use online as a guide to figure out exactly what ECU map works best for your vehicle in whatever conditions that you're racing in. Coming in at tip number 9 is Race the A.I. This one sounds like a no-brainer, but seriously, race the AI at the highest difficulty and highest aggression possible. Doing this will help you to improve your skill and learn more about yourself and learn things about the track that you never really learned before. The AI just might take a different line than you, which could potentially be faster that you could learn from. Also, being on track with other cars gives you a better understanding of what it means to give space into a corner, outside of a corner, and how to defend and attack when it comes to different corners throughout the track. I found that I've run my best lap times when I'm actually racing against the AI at its hardest difficulty than when I'm actually just lapping in a practice session over and over again. You also want to try different weather and day and nighttime conditions, as this could definitely help you to improve your racecraft. Last up at tip number 10 is to go online. A lot like tip number 9, racing other people is the best teacher that you could ever get while racing in ACC. It's fun, it's fast, and you will learn so much about your own racecraft, as well as get many different tips and tricks on how to improve your racecraft from other racers. I found this to be the best teacher, whether I'm trying out the different events that are posted online or just hopping into quick lobbies or even setting up my own lobby. The best teacher and the most fun that this game can provide is going online. Don't be afraid. I was afraid initially to do it, but after doing it the first time, I've gotten really addicted to it, and it has proven to be some of the best, most fun racing that I've ever done in any racing sim title. Got a couple of bonus tips that I also want to throw in. First one being, use the internet. It is your friend. There are a bunch of wiki pages and Reddit forums that talk a lot about ACC and some of the intricacies of the setups, as well as like different tips or to how to handle certain corners, and just a whole host of other things that I just don't have the time to go over here in this video. But always remember that the internet is your friend. Lastly, a big one that I did not talk about is when you actually pit in, make sure that you are turning off your car when you actually reach your pit box. Yeah, as trivial as it sounds, this one can actually really trip you up. If you've played other sims that don't require you to turn off your engine, you can easily forget on here, and you will be sitting in your pit box for a very long time until you remember to turn it off. Once you turn it off, then your pit crew will go to work, and then also remember to turn your car back on before you pull out of the pits. Don't worry so much about your pit limiter. As long as you set it before you went into the pits, it will remain on when you're ready to leave the pits. And that's all I got for this one. These are my top 10 tips that I want to share with everyone. And if you found these tips helpful in any way, a like would definitely be appreciated. It really does help this channel grow. Also, if you're new to the market and you're looking for some of the best sim racing gear and equipment, be sure to check the affiliate links in the description below. So with that, I just want to say thanks again for watching, and I'm going to end it there, and I'll see you all in the next one.